everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, which will be on new features available in Prism as of Monday of this week. My name is Rocio Ramirez, and I am the Digital Content and Client Training Specialist here at Exact. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please add your questions in the questions box. I will be pausing periodically to ensure I answer your questions. As usual, feel free to download today's presentation to follow along or to keep as a reference. You can find that in the handout section. And please do let me know if any of you face any issues downloading that presentation, just because GoToWebinar has been giving us some issues with that as of late. This webinar will be recorded and shared with you via email 1 hour after the webinar ends and will also be made available on our YouTube channel. And we're going to give folks just a couple more minutes to get logged on and get their audio sorted. We'll be back with you in just a few moments. All right, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so starting off with some of these changes that you can now see in Prism. So first off, we're going to start off with some system-wide updates that don't really pertain to a particular module, but are super helpful for you to know about. First off, we have the help icon, which has been improved, which will now allow you to submit and view any ticket updates within the system. So if you are familiar with version 3, that was a feature we had available there, and it is now available in Prism as well. You can, of course, continue to email support, but this new feature allows you to do that right within the system for easier access. We also have banner alerts now available, which will now appear whenever release notes are available for an upcoming release. So just as we had this new release roll out, the next release that we have coming up, whenever those release notes are ready and available for you to review, you'll get that banner on your screen whenever you log on to be able to let you know that those are ready. You can review what's coming and you can stay up to date. So let's take a look and see what those look like. So with the system here, whenever you went ahead and this is what a school user login looks like, you have this question icon at the top of your browser or your page. Whenever you clicked on that option, it would give you some details about how you could get help. You could go to our help center. You could email support directly by emailing them at v4support@exact.com. So that let you know how you could get access to our support team or any resources that we had available for Prism. So this has actually been updated now. So when you do click on that, you will be redirected to a page that looks like this. And so this will allow you to actually submit tickets while logged into the system. So on the left-hand panel here, you'll enter in your subject line, upload any attachments, maybe screenshots to something you are having an issue with, and of course, type in your message there. Access to the Help Center is still available up at the top, which is linked there for you. So that is still accessible easily on this page. So once you submit a ticket, these tickets will show up here. The ID numbers for each of these tickets are clickable, so you can actually see the email thread that's going on between you and support. So you send in your request and whatever updates they actually send, those will actually show up here for you to review that full thread. Now, just a few things to note with this feature because it is in its early stages of development. Just wanted to call out a few things on this feature. So tickets will only appear on this page if they were submitted after February 17th. So if you submitted a ticket prior to that date, it will not appear on this list. So no need to freak out. It is still in our system and we will surely help you with that, but it just won't appear on this screen. Another thing is that tickets submitted via email will not be listed on this screen either. So you must use this form here in order for your ticket to appear on the list. And of course, this will be updated in the coming releases. So hopefully in the future, in the near future, we are able to list out all tickets and not just the ones submitted through this page. And the last thing is that you will only see tickets you have individually submitted. So if any other person from your team has submitted a ticket on their own, you won't have access to that information. You will only see your own. And I do have a question here that I wanted to just kind of let folks know about here. Prathna said, in the future, will you be able to CC additional recipients to your ticket? That is a great feedback and suggestion for this. Definitely something we can consider adding in the future for future releases. Thanks, Prathna. All right. So moving on from our ways to submit tickets. The next item we have on our list is that every Friday prior to a release, which is every 6 to 8 weeks, we do send out a communication to all Prism users, which includes our release notes detailing everything that will change and a way to sign up for a walkthrough webinar, which is what we're doing now. So we do realize at times we may not reach everyone, and we want to make sure that you're in the know. And for this reason, a banner will now appear once release notes are posted so that you can easily find those. And those are always accessible. Of course, there's a link there for you to access, but they will be accessible if you click on this little kind of megaphone icon there. All right, so moving now into some of the features specific to each module. So we're going to start off with students. So some improvements and changes to the student section is that the student view of clinical coursework where they see their clinical coursework assignments, that has been improved and changed to a different view. So we'll take a look at what that looks like now. Students can now also connect with our support team and receive assistance via the chat function. So we'll take a look at that. Enrollment term and graduation term now includes an option for both term and date. So kind of including some of our other disciplines who may need to capture that information. That is now a feature. You can easily add incoming cohorts with our bulk import feature. This is probably one of my favorite features of this release. And lastly, you can now include multiple recipients when sharing the student profile link. So previously, if the student was sharing their profile link with the site, they would only be able to send it to one person or CC one person. That has now been changed so they can include as many people as they need to, and they're all included in the same email, so they're not getting separate notifications. All right, so starting off first with our clinical coursework page. So previously, your students would see their placements in all related learning activities with the clinical coursework page here. So their courses would be listed on the left with the current placement at the top, any courses they had not been placed yet for right beneath that, and then completed placements at the bottom. And then on the right-hand side, once they made their selection, they would then see location information and their to-do list of items that they had to complete. So this page has been revamped. So when the student access the clinical coursework page, they're going to see this grid here. So this grid will kind of shorten up the view. It's going to show them their course details, placement information, anything that may need their attention. But here they'll have an action column with view details available here. So once the student is placed, or even if they're not placed for a particular course offering, they can then view additional details for that particular course. So let's take a look here in terms of once the student goes ahead and decides they want to view details for that particular course, the student is placed, they're going to get that same view. And so the main change here, there's no real change in terms of what they can access. It's just a matter of having the grid first and then this section here with their location and to-do list here. But before, you know, they had that left panel that always kind of stuck with the screen, and so this page might have been a little bit longer than needed. So we're actually trying to use and take full advantage of the entire screen versus having that left panel with those courses listed. So really just kind of some change to the design of the page, but no real information has been removed or changed in terms of what they see. All right, moving on to our chat feature. So if your students need some quick assistance on, you know, maybe they don't know how to do a specific activity within the system, or they're having some technical issues with Prism, we now have the chat function available for them to easily get that help that they need. So the chat function will be located in the bottom right-hand corner. And so your students will go ahead and click on that option should they need it, and that will then open up the chat box available there. So as long as someone is online and available to speak with them, they'll be able to go ahead and type in their message, connect with our support team, and the conversation will be stored within our ticketing system. So should their requests require follow-up or additional work from our support team, we'll have a history of that conversation to refer back to. And I do have a follow-up question here from Prethna. Will this chat box be available to administrative users? It was available to me for 1 day, but shortly removed. And probably the reason for it being removed is maybe they were testing the feature. So the idea is that this chat feature was first rolled out for students. So this is when we've released it. The idea, I think, is next step is faculty users. I believe those are coming in March. And then in April, school administrators will also have this chat function. So we're rolling it out in phases. So students first, faculty users next, and then school administrators in April is what I have as a timeline for that. So definitely will be coming, but students will have access to that first, since they may have some quick questions that they need help with in terms of using the system. Awesome. Okay, perfect. All right, so moving on to enrollment and graduation details. So enrollment and graduation terms, when we looked at this here in the system, we have these options here. It previously only allowed you to enter in term information. So if I were to add in something here, you see enrollment term, that's all I really could add in there. With the recent update, these terms have been updated. So you will now see, let me see if I can back up here. Oh no, so with the recent change, you'll now see that enrollment and graduation, instead of saying term, they do say calendar now. So same function, but it just has a new name now to include some of the features that it's changed to. So you now have the ability to capture in those dates. So here we see for my enrollment calendar, I have summer, and I actually have the actual date of when they enrolled. And this will apply for the graduation calendar as well. It's just their graduation date. So when we go ahead and add this in, you'll now see that there's the option for enrollment term and the enrollment date as well. And this enrollment date, it's not a mandatory field. If you'd like to continue just using the enrollment term, you very well can, but if you'd like to capture in that specific date, this is a calendar picker, so it will ask you for a specific date when adding that in. And as we expand to provide our service to non-lockstep programs, we have found that not every program needs to make separate cohorts for incoming classes. And to make it easier for them to manage their students, we are moving towards removing cohort dependencies within the system. And this is a step in that direction. So this is a needed feature to be able to support those non-lockstep programs. Kind of a side note here as well, but this particular feature will also assist in eliminating the problem of having to move students from one cohort to another. So as we further develop, kind of removing that cohort dependency, moving students to another cohort will be less and less of a burden, as I know currently it's not as easy to do so. All right, so moving on to our student bulk import feature. So again, this is my favorite release item within this release, just because of I love having features in Prism that allow you to really be autonomous and be able to do things within the system without having to ask support. But within the student setup section, you will now have a bulk import option within the student management section here. And so once we go ahead and open this up here, if you have a new cohort of students you'd like to import, all you have to do is click on that plus icon there. It'll open up a drawer for you, and this will walk you through importing the information of your students. So first off, the system will give you a template for you to download, and that's going to show up at the very beginning here. It'll give you some instructions and making sure that you follow some of those details there, but the template will have a bunch of different columns for you to add information for. So this is what the template potentially would look like. I have some sample data here for you guys, but the columns here is what you will see when you download that template. All you really need in terms of adding students is going to be their first name, last name, email address, and cohort. Everything else is optional, but of course you can add that information if you already have that handy. So I've added a student ID number here, some enrollment terms, and graduation term details. So if you already have that, feel welcome to go ahead and add that in there. It'll save you and your students some time. Otherwise, you can stick with just the mandatory fields there. And so once you go ahead and have your data listed there on your spreadsheet, you'll go ahead and upload that to this section here. You'll give your import a title. So I called mine Class of 2026 Import. You'll upload your spreadsheet there and then move on to reviewing any possible issues. So with importing students, let's say you go ahead and add in your Class of 2026, but you have not added that cohort yet. That would be an error within the system. So you do need to have a cohort added before you go ahead and add your students to that cohort. So this page here will show you any errors that you may possibly have for each of those students. You'll see those listed kind of highlighted in red. This particular record I'm importing does not have any errors, so it's all good to go. But you do get to review those before you go ahead and go along with the import. And once you're all done reviewing those, if there are any changes you need to make, you'll go back into your spreadsheet, you'll make those changes, you'll go back to step 1 here, re-upload your template, and then move on to reviewing any possible errors you might have. But otherwise, if it's all good, you'll go ahead and import. And once done, a new entry will appear on your bulk imports table here. It may take it some time depending on the volume of data you might have, but we found that it's super fast. We've had some of our exact team members use this feature, and it is very fast. You might just have to give it a few minutes, come back to this page, refresh it, see the status as successful, and once it's done, you will see your students in the system. So definitely something you guys can give a try if you guys have an incoming cohort you'd like to add to the system. All right, not seeing any questions listed here, so we're going to go ahead and keep moving along. Next up on our list is for our faculty section. You can now easily associate faculty with multiple courses and students. So taking a look at that here we have a faculty profile. And in our previous release, we did create this section here that allows you to view the associations and easily check what you've associated a faculty or staff with in terms of courses, students, and placement. So before you would assign it individually, but you didn't have a place to actually view that information. So we created this section in our last release. And with this new release, we actually have evolved the feature to also include the ability to easily associate in bulk as well. So we do realize some of our programs may have large volumes of data, lots of students, and they want to easily link a faculty or a staff member to a student, to a course. So this is how this feature was kind of born. So within the courses section, you'll have this assign course option. The system will then allow you to kind of search for the specific course offering. You can search by course name, number, cohort, whatever it is you're looking for. And once you have what you need, you'll go ahead and select those courses and move on and associate them. You'll assign a role for each of the courses, and then you'll be on your way. So really easy to go ahead and kind of find what you're looking for and associate that person to that specific course. All right, and this same kind of workflow applies to students as well. So you will have an assigned student option available here within the student section. And this will then, the system will then ask you to search for a particular student, whether it's by name, cohort, tags, whatever it is that you might be looking for. Once you find those students, you'll go ahead and click or select everyone that you need. And then of course, assign a role for each student there, and then associate them. And I do see a question here from Joni. Does this course faculty association remove the need to associate faculty to the specific student placement? At this time, it does not. So the courses association would mean that the faculty or staff member would be able to go in and update course information, measures, attributes, all of that. But in terms of the actual placement, you would still have to do it for each individual placement. Okay. All right, moving on to our compliance section. So these are actually some small changes that we have, really just relabeling to, for clarity, but these are good things to know of in case these apply to you. So first off, we have the share with sites option you see within compliance has been renamed or relabeled to include in profile link. Oh, and I have a comment here from Toby that she has lost audio. If anyone else can confirm if they can hear me okay before we proceed to see if it's a wider issue. Okay, okay, perfect. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, awesome. So with the share with sites field that you have available when setting up compliance, that has been relabeled to now include in profile link. And then another item we have here is that sensitive documents are easily marked or identified by a sensitive label on compliance screens. So taking a look at that here. So when you were setting up compliance items within the setup section, you previously had the option to enable, ooh, that went too fast. Sorry about that, folks. You had this option here to share with site. So basically for each of these items, you decided whether you'd like to turn that feature on, turn that feature off. And this actually was a bit confusing for some of our users. We realized that the label wasn't the best it could be. So we have renamed it so that it's more accurate and reflective of what it actually does. So that you will now see include in profiling, which is what the feature is doing here. So just for clarity purposes, that has been relabeled. The other thing is that sensitive documents are available upon request. If you are not familiar with sensitive documents, you first have to let our support team know if there are any compliance items that should be labeled as sensitive. And once they're labeled as sensitive, you also get to decide if anyone on your team should not be able to access or view those items. So if there's like one person on your team that should be the only person that has access to view them, and everybody else should not be seeing them, that is what a sensitive document is. So you do have to contact support, work with our team to make sure that those items are labeled as sensitive and only specific people have access to viewing those. So that's what a sensitive document is. And within the system, we have now added in some labels here to be able to help you identify any documents which are sensitive. So here we have an item that has been approved. But once you open it up, you'll see that sensitive tag there right below it. And so this will apply to all compliance screens. So even if, let's say, the student was sharing their profile or you were sharing the student's profile, that sensitive will show up, just letting you know that it is that particular type of document. All right. Moving on to our next module here, we have sites. And for sites, we have only really one feature change that we'd like to talk to you guys about, and that's going to be the ability to link contracts to multiple sites. And so this is going to be, in terms of feature changes, this particular feature or release change is going to be a foundational feature that will assist us in a larger vision we have for the contract section within Prism. So the idea is that in the future, contracts will be an independent entity outside of site. So right now, in order to view contracts, contracts are linked right within a site. But we do want to kind of take that out and have a contract section for those people that are managing these contracts. So to move in that direction, uh, we now have the ability to link contracts to different sites. So this is going to be useful for programs who have sites that are covered by the same contract, but don't want to go through the hassle of merging those sites under one location, which, as you may know, is currently a manual and tedious process in terms of merging those. If one site is supposed to be a location for another site, that is a manual process you have to do. So instead of merging them, you can easily link that contract to that second location and save yourself some time. So within the contract section here, you're going to see this link icon at the top. So next to the add contracts option, you're now going to see these like little two chains linked together. And once you click on that there, it'll open up a drawer here and it'll show you all of the contracts available to you. If a contract has already been linked or listed for that particular site, it won't be clickable for you. Otherwise, you'll have the open checkboxes there to select from. And once you choose a contract that needs to be linked to that particular site, you'll go ahead and save that and it'll be linked within the system. Now, if you do happen to link a contract to a site by mistake and need to remove that linkage for the time being, that type of request is not something that you can do within the system. So linking is very easy. Unlinking will have to be a support request. So just be aware of that if you do happen to link a contract by mistake or need to change that in the future for the next, for the foreseeable future, that is something you will have to connect with support to remove. And I do have a question here. Is this from Scarlett here? Is this only for those programs that have a master account? So if you have a school administrator role that allows you to view the contract section, you should be able to link contracts to multiple sites. And I do have another question here from April. Does this change the way a contact is linked to locations? April, I'm not sure if you meant to say contract or if you meant contact as in personnel. But if you are referring to, okay, contract, thank you. Does this change the way a contract is linked to locations? No, this is only for linking those contracts to multiple sites. So the current way that you go ahead and link to locations would remain the same. Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and move along then. Up next, we have our slots module. So two major feature changes here. So when you are sending slot requests, communications through the system, you can now customize and set up automated email. So these were always available in the past, but the ability to change the verbiage on your email template was not something that you could do yourself. It had to be something that support changed for you. And even seeing the sample was very difficult within Prism before. But now you can set those up. You can actually customize the language of your email, preview a sample, and that's going to be for the two automated emails we have available, which is going to be for sites who request to be contacted at a later time for a slot request, and for those of you that use a confirmation email. So when a site actually offer slot availability, if you send them a confirmation email with a summary of what they've offered, there is an automated email for that. So you'll get to set those up and customize them. And the other option here is that we have a slot request response report, which has been revamped. It's been made available in the system and it is updated in real time versus every like 24 hours or 1 week that we had before. That was a limitation that made it kind of difficult to view changes and updates in the system. So that has been changed and it is now updated in real time. Okay, so looking at those automated emails, so within the site section, you have a communication section, and there you can then either send a communication out for a slot request or an updated location information request. But for the slot request specifically, you're going to have an auto notification option. And so here you get to decide whether you'd like to use them, turn those on, but you will now see an email template link right next to it, which then allows you to customize your email. So once you click on that email template link there, it'll open up a drawer for you. And for the slot confirmation, you have the ability to send that automated email to both the site and the school. So you do get to customize both of those email templates. But once you do look at these emails, you can update information within the subject line, within the actual body of the email. You'll have those merge fields available for you to include within the body of the email. And of course, you will also be able to view a sample of it as well. So if you are using the slot request or whenever you do get to that point, just know that you can actually customize that verbiage for those automated notifications. All right, now if you have sent a slot request or an update location information request in the past, you may be familiar with this report. This is the response report that existed before. So this report showed you the details of slots that were offered or any changes to the site profile that the site was making. And up until this release, this response report was a updated weekly, and it was a download only report. So when you access that particular section of the system, you just had a download link. It would download it for you, and you then get an Excel spreadsheet. So this is what it looked like before. And with the recent release, that has been updated to look a little bit like this. So once you access the response report, depending on your communication, if you're sending out both the slot request and an updated location information request, you may have two tabs. But for the slot request here, you're going to have a tally at the top that lets you know how many locations you reached out to, how many of those have responded, how many of those have not. And for each location here, you're going to see a row with some details about the status of their request. So have they just not offered anything? Have they decided they want to be contacted at a later time? Have they actually offered slot availability? And if they have offered slot availability, they're going to have this view icon here on the very last column. And once you click on that, it'll open up a drawer for you that will show you what exactly they have offered. So this is a nice and easy way for you to see what's available or what that particular location has provided your program with. And of course, if you'd like to view a full list of all slots provided to you, that's going to be within the placement section. But this is a nice way to view those responses and those details. If you have also sent out an updated location information request, that will be a secondary tab on this report. And this report will only list locations once a response has been received. So if they went ahead and made changes to their site information, this will show up here. And again, you're going to click on that view to actually view the details of what they have changed. Now, with these particular changes that the site has let you know of, these are not going to update automatically within the system. So you will have to go into that particular location, make sure that you update whatever it is that they let you know. So in this particular example, they said Nellie is no longer here and they require a flu shot. So I'd have to go in and update my personnel section, my requirements for that particular location. And once I'm all done making those changes, I can then indicate that this has been updated with that top icon there. So marking that as updated won't actually process these changes. You do have to go into that location profile to go in and make those changes there. So this really works nicely as a to-do list of sorts, so you know what you have to work on and update, but those changes are manual at this time. All right, not seeing any additional questions here, so we're going to go ahead and keep moving. Up next, we have some changes to the wish list module. So we have now made it easy for you to, oh, I do have a question here. I have a question here from Stephanie regarding, I believe, the last slide here on the response report. Can you print it out as a to-do list? And that is a good question. As of now, there is no export functionality to export this to Excel or to print it out. You could potentially print it out, but this would be one at a time. We are currently working on making sure that the export or download option is available. So that is coming very soon, but as of today, you don't have that just yet. But it is on our radar to get ready for you guys as soon as possible. Oh, and I do have another question here from Catherine. General question, will you be adding the support chat feature to Prism? Yes, we will be. So chat is currently live for students now. It will be available for our faculty users in March and for our school administrators in April. So it will be coming. Students have it already, but it's not just yet ready for our school users yet. All right, wonderful. I do have another question from Robin here. I believe this is regarding the response report. Will you be able to filter that report for those that are not updated so that you are not seeing a long report once you have a long report once it has been updated? Is it removed? So looking at this here, actually, I can take a quick pause here just to double check. We do have a filter option available, so I'm just going to take a quick look here at my system so that I can confirm with you guys, since I don't want to give you guys false information here. I'm just going to take a quick look and see if that is an option in our response filter here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and unpause my screen here just to show you guys what that looks like. So I am on the response report for the updated location information. So you can see here, I've already gone ahead and said, I've already updated that information in our system. And within the filter option here, you have the response updated. So you can say yes or no. So you can actually view whatever has not been updated yet. For sure. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go ahead and head on back to our presentation here. And let me go ahead and make sure you guys can see my screen okay? Perfect. All right, so moving on to the wish list section. So some changes that we've done is that as you set up your wish list, it is very common for you to want to see what your wish list actually looks like to your students. So we've made it easier to go ahead and preview your wish list within the setup section. So not having to navigate away from the page, being able to see what you've set up right away is an option now for you to utilize. And related to the My Request workflow or wish list option, when processing My Requests, the All Requests tab will now include students who have not submitted requests. This was previously a separate report, but it is now embedded all in one screen for you to easily access. And related to My Request as well, you can actually now move a submission of a My Request from a student from one course to another should you need to. All right, so let's take a look at how to easily view a wish list from a student's view. So previously, this is the wish list section here. We have our wish list created. If you wanted to see what that particular wish list looked like, you had to navigate away from this page, go into the student section, click on view as, and then log in as a student, click on clinical coursework, select the wish list, and view that once it was available there. So that has actually been, you don't need to use the view as feature here. So once you are in the wish list section, you will now see there is a preview link at the bottom of each card of your wish lists. So once you set these up, if you want to see what that looks like for your students, you'll click on that preview, it'll open up a drawer for you, and it'll take you right to the wish list section. So you don't have to navigate to clinical coursework, select wish lists. It takes you right on that first step here. So you can actually filter through, find the maybe states if you're doing a slot-based wish list, see what that looks like for your students, navigate through those 3 different steps there, and see what you've set up. It's a really easy way to view that once it's done. All right. And so some changes to the My Request section. So if you are using My Request, previously you had a Reports tab available here. So this is where you can see the Reports tab. And the Reports tab actually showed you a list of students who have not initiated any requests for My Requests. So that has actually been changed. So you will now only have one tab after Dashboard, which will be All Requests. And this tab will house both submitted and any not started instances. So if your student has not created anything, they will show up. If it's in progress, it will show up. Submitted will show up. So everything here will be listed for you. And I know some of you may be thinking that if you have a lot of students that have not started their My Request entries, you might have a long list here. The filter option works great. So if you do not want to see those not started yet, you can always filter them out of your view. But you can kind of work with that and see what you need to at that point in time using that filter option. I do have a question here from Stephanie. Are My Requests the items from the wish list? So My Request is a type of wish list. When you set up a wish list, it is one of the options. So you can do slot-based, area-based, location-based, but My Request is one of them where basically your student is giving you details of where they would like to go for a placement. So they'll find out details like the location, contact, their clinician that they'll be working with, and that form may depend and vary from program to program. So you'll work with our support team, set that up, and that's where your student is filling out this My Request for a placement. So it's a type of wish list that you can utilize to secure placements for your students. All right. Cool. The other thing is that when reviewing My Request submissions, you may have a need to move a request that a student has submitted from one wish list to a different one within the same course. So it is now possible to do that. So when you click on a particular submission here, you're going to have a vertical ellipses here right next to the create placement option, and you'll have the option to move this request. So if that particular My Request from the student is not going to work out for that particular set of dates, you can always move that request to a different course. One thing, a couple of things that you have to ensure is that the submission you are moving is for the same course. So you currently can't move a request from DPT 800 to DPT 980. It has to be the same course. You also have to ensure that the course and the wish list have been created wherever you're moving it to. So if you have a DPT 800 and you're moving it to another DPT 800, but the wish list has not been set up yet, then you wouldn't be able to move it over. And the last thing is if you do have multiple My Request forms available, because again, these My Request forms are customizable. So you can have one form where you request a bunch of different information and a much more simpler one. If you do have different form types, you do have to make sure that the wish list you are moving or the My Request form you are moving is being moved to a wish list where the My Request form is the same one. So if you have multiple My Request forms, that's something that you might have to worry about. However, if you just have the one form, that's not something you need to think too much about. So there are a few kind of dependencies before you can go ahead and move the My Requests over. So if those conditions are met, you'll go ahead and move the request. The system will then show you any other additional My Request forms within the same course that you can move that to. So you'll select that and then move that over. I do have a question here from Stephanie. Can students create a request if they have a referral site or preceptor that's not already in the system? Yes, they can. So you can definitely add that in there. You'll just eventually have to add that information in the system to link it. But yes, they don't, the records don't have to exist in your database for them to submit that. I have a question here from Scarlett. Do we need to submit a ticket to set up the My Request form for students? Is there a spreadsheet or form we need to complete to set up the My Request wish list? So you do need to connect with our support team or an account manager or any type of contact from our exact team to really have that discussion of what information you'd like to capture within your My Request form. So again, every program might have a different My Request form where some programs request a bunch of information, some keep it a bit more simpler. So we do need to connect with you first so we can show you kind of our standard template. You can let us know what you'd like to change. We then set it up for you and then you can move forward and turn it on for as many course offerings as you need to. So just connect with us and then we'll kind of get that discussion started with you if you'd like to use that. I have a question here from Rebecca. For a My Request, does this link up to each student's profile? So once a My Request form has been submitted and approved fully, you can create the placement, which will then be linked to the student's clinical coursework section, yes. And one last question here from Stephanie. When student submits the restist not in the system, will it create, oh, the request, I'm so sorry, I was trying to read that. When students submit the request not in the system, will it create a placement or site or location or personnel? So it will not create your sites for you. Here you can kind of see, you'll link that information in the system. So this will actually show you some jars here where you can actually find that. If it doesn't exist, you'll have to create it, come back and link it. But once it's all approved, you'll easily create a placement. That button there will then make sure that it places your student. You still do need to go in and add some additional details like the setting for that particular placement. But other than that, that create placement will do that placement for you. Okay, awesome. Lots of interest in My Request. It is definitely a handy feature if that is something that is up your alley there. Okay, so moving on to our placement section. So a few changes here. When you are setting your rotation minimum required duration, previously we had weeks and days available. Hours is now also an option. So if you have shorter rotations that are based on hours, that is an option. When you are placing your students, you can now view the distance between the location and the student's current address. So making it easier for you to place your students based on where they currently are living is an option now with that feature there. We've made some improvements when you are placing a student and selecting contacts for that placement. So we'll take a look at that. You can easily check the status of location required documents for a placement. So we do have a new placement clearance report. So if a location requests additional information from the student, maybe some orientation packet information, clearance forms that they have to do before they start their placement, we do have a report for you to view the status of those. And for placement notifications, you can now actually schedule them to be sent for a specific date and time. So if you like to get ahead of the game, schedule your emails to be sent for a later date and time, that is an option. All right, so looking at our first option here, when we are looking at, and I'm so sorry about that. Here, yes. So when you are setting up your rotations, you'll have the setup section, you'll add a rotation, and you're going to have this time segment. So previously we only had weeks and days. You now also have hours available on that section there. All right, in terms of your location and student distance, so when you are placing students, you can actually now view and sort your list by distance. So looking at this list here, we're placing students by location. When you select a slot, the system will then show you the student information. You'll have a column for distance. Now, you may have some dashes there, and that may be due to an invalid address. Or if the student has not entered in a current address, then it will show as empty. Otherwise, you'll see this distance listed here. You can sort by it, so you see the shortest distance first. It is listed in miles for you. So that is an option now here on this placement screen. If you are placing by student view, once you click on that plus icon there, the distance will also appear here. However, there is a limitation on this page where you cannot set the grid to show you the shortest distance first. So that sorting option is not an option within the student view, but it is available within the location view. But nonetheless, you'll be able to see that there as well. And the last thing is if you are using direct placement to place your students where you don't have to add a slot, you just place your student directly to a location. The distance is also not currently available there yet, but it will be hopefully in the near future. All right, when in terms of selecting placement contacts here. Previously, when you were adding clinician details or site or location contacts, you had to scroll through the list, select your users. There was no easy way to search. And for some of our programs that have a large volume of data, maybe a long list of contacts, it was very tedious to go through that list, uncheck users, or find particular contacts. This is actually something that was very tedious for them. So that has actually been updated to now include a search bar and an option to select or deselect all contacts when looking at those two fields there. All right, and talking about those location specific required documents for a placement, if a location has additional documentation that they need from the student, there was previously no easy way to view that information. The student just had them on their clinical coursework page. They'd upload them and share them via their profile link. But you as a user now have the placement clearance report or section. So this will then show you if it's not applicable, there's nothing to see there, but you will have statuses available for those that do. So you can then easily open that up, see where they are in terms of uploading those documents, viewing them if necessary, downloading them as well. All right. In terms of once you've placed your students, previously you could always send your placement notifications, but we've now introduced a way for you to actually schedule them. So you'll now have that second option to be able to select a specific date and time when your emails should be sent. So that's a nice feature available for you if you'd like to schedule those ahead of time. And if you do go ahead and schedule those ahead of time, you will have an email dashboard available on this page. And this will actually allow you to see any emails that have been sent and scheduled. So if, let's say, you scheduled your emails to go out and realized you needed to make some last minute changes and you need to cancel them, it is possible to go ahead and cancel any scheduled emails within this section. All right, moving into our learning activities. First off, we have our evaluations and forms. You can now request that support build forms or evaluations that are not associated or attached to a placement. And for our PT and PTA users, students can now print the CI details form to collect a signature from their clinician to verify that the information they have on file is correct. So forms or evaluations you have available and currently, you may have forms or evaluations you would like your students or faculty to complete outside of a placement. So maybe you have a student self-assessment form, an advisor evaluation of the student, or you track co-curricular activities throughout their enrollment, such as volunteer work and service learning. So if you have any forms that sound similar to that or just are not associated with a placement, but you still need your students to complete them, that is an option that you can now create within the system. So this is what a standard standard evaluation or form looks like. You have a published date, a due date, and it's all based on the placement start date, end date, mid date. So with these new types of forms, this is what it might look like in the future here. If you do have that created, you'll connect with our support team, build that form, and when you add this to your course, it'll ask you this first question: is this a course-based form? You'll answer yes, and then it will no longer be associated with the placement. All you'll need to do is give that form a published date and a due date. So this won't actually be anchored to a placement. It will just be available for your students to complete without being placed at a location. And I know I'm breezing through some of these, but I did not realize how short we were on time, folks. So I'm trying to make sure I cover as much as I can to ensure you guys are up to speed on these topics here. Up next here, we have the CI details signature form. So for our PT and PTA programs, once the student signs or completes the CI details form, in order to get this feature here, the school first has to review the CI details form. So here we have a pending school review. So the school would have to go in and mark this as reviewed. And once the item is reviewed, the form would then show a signature block at the bottom of the page. So your student would then be able to download this form, print it out, share it with the CI, have them sign it, and then they would then be able to upload it as an assignment to Exact. All right, moving on to the patient logs items. We have some changes done here, actually quite a few. So the patient log layout, we've made some improvements. So this is going to be by request only. So if you like what the changes we've done to the patient log layout, be sure to connect with our support team to let them know you'd like the new layout of the patient log. Some changes to our patient log statuses that we've made for consistency. So we'll take a look at those. We have the ability to request an attestation to be signed by the site or anybody who reviews patient logs. Both clinicians and faculty can now bulk review patient logs. And submissions of patient encounter guidelines are now readily and visibly, really just apparently visible to the student when they're logging in their patient encounters. Students can update the date of encounter for all statuses except for approved. So once they're approved, they're locked. They can no longer make any changes, but for any other status, they can continue to update that date of encounter should they need to. And we also have a new report, which is the patient log productivity report. Okay, so the patient log layout, once we're looking at this from a student point of view, your students will see a patient log section. They'll click on that plus icon, and this is what the patient log used to look like. So you have your sections there, and we really wanted to make some changes here to really make it a little bit just nicer to the eye here. So this is what the patient log will now look like. You have your sections on the left so students can easily navigate between those sections. And each section will have a header color so they can easily see when they're moving on to a different section. We also have the ability to change the color of the questions. So if you'd like those questions to not be black, but maybe be a blue color, that is an option. So this is what the new layout will look like. If you'd like to make sure that your patient log looks like this instead of the previous version, you can definitely reach out to our support team, let them know you'd like the new layout to be implemented on your system. All right, in terms of our patient log statuses, we've had some discrepancy with the statuses we've used for timesheet and patient log, and we want to make sure they are consistent. So before you had in progress, submitted, needs attention, approved, and locked. So this has actually been matched to the timesheet. So you now have in progress, pending review instead of submitted, needs attention, and approved. So there is no longer an approved and locked. Approved is both approved and logged. So students will not be able to make any changes to any approved patient logs. All right, moving on to the patient log attestation, and I know we're running over, folks. I did not realize how many new changes were in the system and did not account for that. But if you guys would like to stick around, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, if you have to go, you're more than welcome to listen to the rest of this recording at whenever you have the time. But I'd just like to note, if you guys have to drop off, totally fine. So I'll keep on going. We have just a few more slides left here. So for the patient log attestation, when users are reviewing patient logs, you can have them sign off on an attestation for a particular statement. So make them, say I acknowledge and review, or I confirm that this is the case. So that is an option. So within the patient log setup, you have this attestation section. So you'll turn this on, and then you'll go ahead and add in your message that you'd like for them to review and attest to when approving patient logs. So this is going to show up for them every time they review patient logs, and it will show up for both clinicians. So if the site is doing the reviewing, they will see this attestation. If any member from your team on the school side is reviewing them, they will also see this attestation. So it works in two ways. It'll show up for both of those users. But it's just one attestation here. So you'll go ahead and add in your attestation, make sure it's on, save that. And on the reviewer side, this is a school user reviewing a patient log. Once they are approving those logs, it'll then say, it'll show them that particular attestation. So they actually have to say, I attest and approve when they are reviewing that. So again, this attestation, if you turn this on, will show up for anyone who is reviewing. So that may be the site, that may be a faculty or a school user that's reviewing these, but reviewers will see that attestation there. All right, we also have the ability, so when users were reviewing patient logs, whether that was a site or the school, they had the ability to go into individual patient logs and mark them as reviewed or approved or needs attention. And they also had the option to approve just basically everything that has been submitted. So with the recent release, we've introduced checkboxes available for each of those logs. So if, let's say, 3 out of 10 of those patient logs should be approved, but maybe some 2 of the other logs that were submitted needed attention or needed some changes, you didn't want to approve everything, but you also didn't want to go through each log and approve individually. So this bulk option lets you kind of pick and choose what you would like to approve and then work through the rest of those that need some changes. So users can easily click on those checkboxes, approve those logs, rather than just be an all or nothing kind of a deal. All right, moving on to submission guidelines. So when you are working with patient logs, you have this question where logs must be created within X number of days of patient encounter, and you get to set that up, whether that's 10 days, 5 days, 15 days, but you as a program decide what that timeline should be. And we want to make sure that students are aware of this timeline, since we have had reports where students were experiencing difficulty with not knowing exactly when they could or could not enter in their patient encounters. So on the patient log here on the student view, you'll have that submission window text here available at the very top. So this lets them know when they can go ahead and submit their patient logs. All right. And in terms of reports, we do have a newly added report available that will help programs using patient logs and timesheets compare how much of the student's time in clinic is spent with patients. So looking at this report here, it's going to be the productivity report for patient log and timesheet. So it will aggregate both timesheet and patient log information. So this is what the report looks like. You'll have lots of filters available here, but basically the report will aggregate both time in terms of the timesheet, logs that they've entered, and it will then give you that patient time information here. So I have a screenshot of those additional columns with consult time and that productivity at the end. So you get to review that information and see how much of their time they've spent with patients. All right, getting to the end here, we have a timesheet and time off. So you have the ability to set up timesheet categories at the program level. Previously, this was done on a course by course basis. You have the ability to rearrange columns when reviewing timesheets, and faculty can now sign off on timesheets as well. So with categorizing time entries here, we have a timesheet available. So you'll see here there is a question, require students to categorize each time entry. So if you are utilizing this feature, this was done previously on a course by course basis. So this has actually been updated. You will now see a link here. So you can set that category list for all courses at once. So you set it once and you're all done. You don't have to do it multiple times or every single time. And this will redirect you over to the setup section of the courses section. And you're going to have the timesheet option listed here. So same feature, it's just been relocated to be able to let users set these up once, and you don't have to set it up every single time you have a course offering coming up. All right, and in terms of reviewing those timesheets, whether you are a school user or a site user, when reviewing these, you'd click on that status there. It'll open up a drawer for you. Let's say that there was a timesheet that was not approved. You did have to go ahead and add a comment before you clicked on the not approved. If you selected the timesheet and said not approved, it would give you an error and said, please add reviewers' comments before you can mark this as not approved. So because of that, this column used to be on the very far right side of this grid and it was easy to miss. So we went ahead and actually moved that over to be the very first column that you see so that it's easy to spot. You can easily add that without having to scroll too much. But in order to make this experience better for our users, we also did enable the ability to go ahead and rearrange those columns. So you'll click on that little wrench icon and that will then allow you to move around those columns that you see when reviewing timesheets. All right, and so this particular feature is mainly for our social work and undergraduate nursing programs. They tend to use this feature a lot more, but it is available for everyone where faculty are signing off on timesheets, whether it's at the end of the week or at the end of the placement. So when you are setting up your timesheets, you will have the question, do you require faculty sign off? So if you do, you'll set that to yes, and on the faculty profile or faculty login, whoever is doing the sign off, when they are reviewing these placements, they will have an option to go ahead and for each of those timesheets, select those and say faculty sign off there at the top. And yes, this webinar is being recorded, so if you do have to drop off or if you joined a little late, it will be available for you folks to access. All right, last section, guys. I promise. So in terms of curriculum management, we have a few updates. You can now bulk upload courses to your course catalog, and you can easily remove unwanted measures from a course measure category. And then the last option here, last feature update, is that course offerings now show a number of registered students on the banner for easy access. So these are pretty straightforward, but we really focus on bulk uploading, bulk updating, and this was the case for our courses as well. So we do realize that the ability to bulk import data is important to save you time, and within the courses section, we have actually added the ability to bulk upload course information to the course catalog section. So you're going to have this upload courses here. And very similar to our student bulk upload, it will show you a template that you'll have to download. You'll look at that information, enter in whatever details you'd like to import, upload that information, and then move forward along the process to import. And this is really the first step as we will be focusing on building the capability to bulk upload course offerings in the future as well. So we're starting off with course catalog, but course offerings will be coming as well. Okay, and in terms of deleting measures, so within a course, whether this information was imported by our team or you need to just start with a clean slate, deleting measures was very time consuming, which required a lot of clicks to get the job done in terms of deleting everything. So our team has introduced an option to delete all within a particular measure here. So really saving you some time. So if you do need to start off with a clean slate or just remove everything with a particular section, you're able to do so. All right, and the last item here on our list is showing that number of registered students. So previously, in order to see the number of registered students, you had to go into student registration and actually check the count on that particular grid, which would be kind of tedious depending on how many students you had. So that has actually been, now it's being showcased right at the top here, so you do not have to go into that particular section to dig through that and find that number. It's just easily shown to you within that course details banner there. All right, and that brings us to the end of our webinar, folks. I know I ran over by a few minutes. I do apologize, and I do thank you for sticking around with me. I know there was about 2 questions that I did not get to answer, but I will be looking at that shortly after this webinar ends to make sure I contact you guys separately. Again, thank you for your time. If you do have a few minutes, we'd love to hear from you. Stick around once the webinar ends if you'd like to complete a short survey to let us know how we're doing, what can be improved, any additional topics you'd like to see in the future. We really appreciate your time, folks, and we hope that this was helpful in terms of learning what was new and improved in Prism. All right, thank you so much, folks. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.